The internet has solved countless mysteries, but few stories are as haunting as the man who woke up behind a dumpster with no memory of who he was. For over a decade, the FBI, police departments, and private investigators failed to identify him. Then, in 2012, a desperate post appeared on Reddit that would change everything. What followed was one of the most extraordinary crowdsourced investigations in internet history, proving that sometimes the power of collective determination can succeed where even the most sophisticated law enforcement agencies fail. August 31, 2004 began as an ordinary morning at a Burger King in Richmond Hill, Georgia. Maria Santos, a young crew member, stepped into the humid morning air to dispose of the restaurant's trash. What she discovered would haunt her forever. Behind the grease-stained dumpster lay a naked man, his middle-aged body ravaged by the Georgia sun. Fire ants crawled across his blistered skin, while angry red welts covered his back and legs. He wasn't moving. Maria's scream pierced the morning quiet as she ran inside for help. When paramedics arrived, the man had begun to stir, but something was terribly wrong. He couldn't speak coherently, showed no signs of assault or obvious injuries, and had absolutely nothing with him. No clothes, no identification, no wallet, nothing. Just a sunburned body, nearly dead from exposure. The ambulance rushed him to St. Joseph's Hospital in Savannah, where staff admitted him under a placeholder name that would stick for years: Burger King Doe. Dr. Rachel Chen was the attending physician that morning, and she immediately noticed something unusual. His vitals were surprisingly stable, she would later recall. No drugs, no alcohol, labs within normal limits. This wasn't your typical homeless patient. The man appeared to be in his mid-50s, with a long, unkempt beard and cracked fingernails. He had 3 shallow depressions on his skull and several scars on his left arm and neck, but nothing that explained his current condition. Most disturbing was his behavior. He kept his eyes tightly shut, refused food, and spoke only in murmurs. When nurses asked his name, he replied simply, "They call me BK around here." When pressed for his real name, he repeated, "BK, but you're getting me confused." Then he went silent again for days. On the 8th day, everything changed. BK became violently agitated, lashing out at nurses, screaming that they were beasts and demons. He demanded a priest, but when one arrived, he denounced the man as an imposter. Psychiatrists diagnosed him with catatonic schizophrenia and began aggressive treatment with antipsychotics. But the medication only calmed his behavior. It couldn't restore what was missing: his entire identity. BK was eventually transferred to Memorial Health Psychiatric Unit, where Dr. James Morrison conducted formal interviews. "What's your name?" Morrison asked. "I don't know." "Where are you from?" "Maybe Indianapolis." "Do you remember anyone? Family, friends?" "I think I have brothers, 3 of them, but I can't see their faces." The fragments were tantalizing, but inconsistent. He described the inside of an old movie theater, a road cutting through cornfields, streets he believed were in Denver, but no names, no concrete places. The only thing he seemed to be certain about was his birthday, August 29, 1948. "How do you know how old you are?" a nurse asked. "I was born exactly 10 years before Michael Jackson. I remember that distinctly." Dr. Morrison discovered something fascinating during the psychological evaluations. While BK's personal memories were completely obliterated, his factual knowledge remained perfect. He could name all the 20th century presidents in order. He knew George W. Bush was currently president. He recalled the Iraq invasion of 2003. He answered historical questions with remarkable accuracy. It was as if someone had taken scissors to his brain and carefully cut out only the personal, while leaving the public intact. Some doctors suspected malingering. Perhaps he was a fugitive creating an elaborate performance, but Dr. Morrison disagreed. "He's in the Indianapolis region of Anamnecar State, intercalated. He and his sisters feel the pain. Canteen over there, listen from the far." But eventually, with no diagnosis that qualified him for long-term care, BK was released back onto the streets of Savannah, a man with no past, no identity, and no way to build a future. The impossible catch-22. In America, you need a social security number to exist. Without one, BK was trapped in an impossible catch-22. No social security number meant no job. No job meant no address. No address meant no identification. No identification meant no social security number. In January 2005, 4 months after his discovery, BK was admitted to the J.C. Lewis Primary Healthcare Center, a facility for the homeless and indigent. There, BK met director Michael Harrison, who saw beyond the labels. He's not running from his identity, Harrison told his staff. He's trying desperately to reclaim it. Harrison asked BK if he wanted to give himself a name. "I remember my name is Benjamin," the man replied. "The ward clerks insisted on a last name, so since everyone was calling me BK, I chose Kyle. And so Burger King Doe became Benjamin Kyle." At the center, Benjamin proved to be unlike other residents. While many patients battled severe mental illness or addiction, Benjamin had discipline. He read voraciously from the shelter's small library, mostly science fiction novels. He mopped floors, fetched meals, cleaned bathrooms with methodical precision. Nearly 9 months after his discovery, a charity arranged cataract surgery for him. The operation changed everything. Benjamin could finally see clearly, and he gradually created a role for himself, not just as a patient, but unofficial staff. He assembled a uniform from donations: white pants, white shirt, white shoes. On his hip, he wore a jangling loop of shelter keys, a ring of purpose in a world that had no use for him. Among the nurses was Dr. Lisa Martinez, a former accountant who had turned to psychiatric care. She found Benjamin unlike anyone she'd met: intelligent, gentle, respectful, with a soft Midwestern accent. "I figured it would take 6 months, maybe a year, to figure out his real name," she later said. "Someone had to know him. He didn't just drop out of the sky." Lisa started posting Benjamin's photos on missing persons websites and forums. She reached out to local law enforcement, suggesting Benjamin might have been attacked and robbed before ending up behind the Burger King. She even contacted the FBI, requesting they investigate it as a potential crime. What Lisa learned was infuriating. Richmond Hill police had never opened an investigation because, in their view, there was no evidence of a crime. The FBI's Savannah office declined the case, unwilling to take on what they saw as a bureaucratic nightmare. The message was clear: not knowing who you are wasn't their problem. What baffled Lisa most was the system's indifference. This was the mid-2000s, a post-9/11 world obsessed with surveillance. Citizens were cataloged and tracked with fingerprints, GPS, facial recognition, databases containing millions of records. And yet Benjamin was invisible. No birth certificate, no tax records, no credit history, no driver's license, nothing. It shouldn't have been possible, but it was. Then, in 2007, FBI Special Agent William Kershaw decided to take the case. He collected Benjamin's fingerprints and ran them through AFIS, the world's largest fingerprint database, containing over 260 million records. "I thought there was an excellent chance Benjamin had a criminal history or maybe military service," Kershaw recalled. The results came back negative. They tried Interpol, Canadian authorities, even the U.S. Marshals in case Benjamin was in witness protection. Still, nothing. Detective Sarah Preston of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation had another idea. What if he's in there under a different name? The missing persons database contained approximately 80,000 active cases. Preston requested a list of everyone whose description might match Benjamin going back to the 1970s. It produced 350 possible identities. Case by case, she reviewed each one manually. Time and time again, hope flickered and died. Still believing someone might recognize him eventually, she added Benjamin's case to her training curriculum for future officers. That same year, Lisa Martinez's patients wore thin. The system had failed them repeatedly. She turned to the media as a last resort. In September, the Savannah Morning News ran the headline, "A Real Live Nobody." The Associated Press picked it up. Suddenly, Benjamin Kyle became the nowhere man, the living John Doe. News stations across the country called. Theories poured in. Every promising tip led to another dead end. In October 2008, national television came calling. Dr. Phil McGraw offered to feature Benjamin on his show, reaching millions of viewers. But first, producers demanded verification. They hired Harold Stevens, a former FBI agent, who spent months vetting the story. His conclusion? "I'm 90% sure this guy is telling the truth." To appear on the show, Benjamin needed police escort to board a flight without ID. Lisa accompanied him. The episode aired on October 16, 2008, to over 4 million viewers. Calls flooded in. Claims of him being a classmate, a priest, an army buddy, someone's ex-husband. Others theorized electroshock therapy, alien abduction, or mutant fire ants. In terms of real leads, the appearance was a complete failure. On the flight home, Lisa didn't ask how Benjamin felt. She already knew. It's one thing to be missing. It's another to realize no one is missing you. In February 2009, Dr. Colleen Richards entered the picture. A physicist turned genealogist with a PhD from Duke University, Colleen had built laser measurement tools for NASA before becoming obsessed with genealogy. She flew from California to meet Benjamin, who by then had left the shelter and was surviving by mowing lawns for neighbors. Yet his memory had begun clearing slightly. He recalled the Indiana State Fair as a child, Mexican food at Mama Elena's in Denver, watching the 1976 film Car Wash at a theater in Colorado. Piece by piece, a fragmented map emerged. Colorado, the 1970s through mid-1980s. After that, nothing. Colleen searched archived newspapers across Indianapolis, Boulder, and Denver. She contacted motor vehicle departments in 3 states, running facial recognition against licensed databases. Nothing matched. She combed birth records, church registries, military draft cards. She turned to DNA testing through 23andMe, which revealed Benjamin shared significant DNA with members of the Powell family, traced to Western Carolinas. Colleen placed Benjamin's photos in local newspapers and began collecting DNA samples. She was obsessed, convinced she was on the verge of solving the mystery. Then Benjamin abruptly cut off all contact with Colleen. When Lisa asked why, Benjamin told her, "I've been Benjamin Kyle for a long time now. Even if they figure out who I am, I'm probably going to feel like Benjamin Kyle." Lisa began to feel less like she was helping him and more like she was enabling his avoidance. Eventually, she gave him a deadline and found him a shelter back in Savannah. On the last day, Benjamin asked to burn his old mail in her backyard. She refused. Too dry, too windy. He did it anyway, lighting everything on fire before walking away with just a backpack. After leaving Lisa's home, Benjamin picked a direction and started walking to Florida. Georgia sheriff's deputies recognized him from Detective Preston's training module and offered a ride to the Florida border. In Jacksonville, he was denied entry to a homeless shelter for lacking ID and spent the night sleeping in a field behind the sheriff's office. Desperate, Benjamin called John Anderson, a 21-year-old film student who wanted to make a documentary. John Anderson contacted a local news station which aired a segment about Benjamin. Watching that broadcast was Marcus Shaw, owner of Crazy Fish restaurant. Something about the story struck a chord, so Shaw offered Benjamin a dishwashing job at Crazy Fish. There, he quickly became the best worker in the kitchen, knowledgeable about every piece of equipment, staying late and eagerly accepting every task. John Anderson's efforts didn't stop there. To reach an audience the TV shows might have missed, he helped Benjamin set up a Facebook page and got him on a Reddit Ask Me Anything thread in 2012. The response exploded. Redditors jumped at the opportunity to solve a real mystery. They launched a White House petition asking the federal government to issue Benjamin a new Social Security number. They needed 25,000 signatures in 30 days for an official response. They got 18,000. Impressive, but not enough. Then, Colleen Richard saw Benjamin's story gaining traction online and began telling media that Benjamin didn't want help, he just liked attention. Benjamin responded by confessing on Facebook why he'd cut ties with Colleen. According to him, she had begun withholding his data and exploiting his vulnerability. Colleen denied these claims, but this public fallout became the turning point because it brought in Sarah Moore, a genetic genealogist and TV personality. Sarah specialized in autosomal DNA passed from both parents. She worked with volunteers she called search angels, building hypothetical family trees. Appalled by what Colleen allegedly did, Sarah set out to help Benjamin herself. She traced his DNA to Powell ancestry, identifying deep Southern roots. But Benjamin's case remained the longest she'd ever tackled. By May 2015, Crazy Fish had closed. With nowhere to go, Benjamin moved in with Marcus Shaw, but the arrangement was fraying. Shaw's bouts crept in. He's very exact on a lot of stuff, really analytical. Ask him about building something or history or tools, and he's incredibly precise. But when it comes to his own story, he gets vague. Without the restaurant to give him structure, Benjamin's life shrank. He biked 3 hours weekly across Jacksonville to visit a food pantry. He lost 30 pounds in 3 months. Then one morning, in June 2015, everything changed. Sarah Moore called with 3 words: "We found him." She had called Benjamin first, but he'd hung up almost immediately. An hour later, Benjamin was on the phone, voice trembling. "I'm in shock," he said. Ironically, the breakthrough came from the feud. A Powell family member in South Carolina had seen a Facebook post about Sarah's clash with Colleen. That woman happened to be heading to a Powell family reunion and collected DNA samples from distant cousins. With those samples, Sarah filled in missing branches of Benjamin's family tree. She narrowed it down to one school yearbook, the 1967 Jefferson High School Annual. There was Benjamin's unmistakable face. His name was William Burgess Powell, second son of Vernon and Marjorie Powell, born in Lafayette, Indiana, just north of Indianapolis. He'd attended Catholic school as suspected. His father died in a boating accident in 1969. His mother passed from cancer in 1996. He had 3 brothers, exactly as he'd said. One died young, 2 were still alive, one in Florida, one in Indiana. The birth date Benjamin had clung to for years, August 29, 1948, exactly 10 years before Michael Jackson, was correct. In fall 2015, William returned to Lafayette. His older brother Furman answered the door of their childhood home, a crumbling Queen Anne house coated with ivy. Furman didn't invite him inside. "It's bad in there," he said quietly, but they shared breakfast downtown. Over coffee and eggs, they talked about their shared history. The Powell family story wasn't pretty. Their father was a World War II flight engineer, their mother a Navy photographer. The house had been tense, haunted by hoarding, emotional coldness, and violence. Marjorie had doted on William, her favorite. Furman Sr. took out his rage on the boy. William fled at 16. In his 20s, he worked odd jobs around Lafayette: janitor, handyman, warehouse loader. In 1976, he vanished. His red '66 Rambler was found abandoned near Oakdale Dam. Furman filed a missing person report, but William wasn't missing. He'd simply left. The only man who knew where William went was Charles Murphy, a former co-worker. When contacted, Charles didn't hesitate. He and William had been drinking buddies who decided on a whiskey-fueled whim to leave for Boulder, Colorado. William had gotten a settlement from a workplace injury. With that money, they drove west. In Boulder, William worked as a cook at Azar's, the restaurant he'd remembered having bad service. I was disappointed to learn I cooked there. That food wasn't very good. Between 1983 and 2004, there's no record of William's existence. No taxes, no address, no phone, nothing. Experts say it's rare, but not impossible. If he'd died behind that Burger King dumpster, William would have gone to a pauper's grave for the unidentified. Instead, by chance or providence, his brain erased his name but not his will to survive. In October 2015, William flew back to Indiana with a documentary crew. Family members greeted him, calling him Bill. He remembered none of them, but nodded and smiled politely. One cousin handed him a family tree. William ran his fingers over it. For the first time in years, his history wasn't a question, it was printed in ink. At year's end, William moved into a modest house in Lafayette, a short bike ride from his childhood home. He made friends with neighbors, fed their dogs, fixed their appliances, but never told them who he'd once been. William worried that entering his childhood home might reawaken old memories. Not all memories, he believed, should be remembered. Sometimes he got lost in Lafayette. Streets had changed, businesses were gone, but more than that, time itself felt warped. He explained, "It's like my mind wants to see it one way, and my eyes see it another." In quiet winter months, William sometimes wondered, had he lived as Benjamin Kyle for all those years consciously? Was that a name chosen in a fugue state, or borrowed like a coat? What remains when identity becomes nothing but knowledge that you exist? For Benjamin Kyle, born William Burgess Powell, that question was once everything. Now it's just a shadow trailing the man he's chosen to become. He didn't recover all the pieces, and may never recall the missing 20 years. But he found his name, he found his brother, and maybe, just maybe, he found peace. The case of Benjamin Kyle proves that sometimes the most sophisticated databases and investigative techniques aren't enough. Sometimes it takes the determined curiosity of ordinary people, a nurse who wouldn't give up, a genealogist who saw a puzzle worth solving, and thousands of Reddit users who refused to let a mystery die to accomplish what seemed impossible. The internet didn't just solve a cold case, it gave a man back his identity and proved that collective human determination can triumph where even the FBI fails.